First, I would like to introduce and welcome Mr. Subrata Gupta, who is the Session Chair, CGM Financial Inclusion, NABARD. Please give a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. He's taken a lot of time out of his schedule. We'll also call Mr. Rajneesh Khare, Head Digital Transformation and Mobile Banking, HDFC. Please give him a round of applause. Our esteemed panelist. Our esteemed panelist is Mr. Buchi Bura Babu, who is DGM IT of Bank of India. Please give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I again have Balaji Parsarthi, Head Banking Practices, HP. As I said, you need to be here again. Thank you, Balaji. And last but not the least, we have the MD of Senresa, KP Shah. Please give a big round of applause for KP Shah, our esteemed panelist. Now, I would hand this over to Mr. Subrata Gupta to please take care of the discussion and continue with the panel. Thank you, sir.
Respected audience and my respected panelists here, I think I will start with some of the points which have been discussed earlier, and I think that would make it more clear as to who I represent as a stakeholder I am talking about in a cashless society. There was a talk which was going around about making certain pockets cashless. I am thinking about that small person who is selling mumfali. I am thinking about the tangawala who is pulling a chariot here, who perhaps doesn't have either the knowledge or the skill, or doesn't even have a bank account where the money will be transacted from. How does he operate in that cashless society? He is also a part of the economy. I think that is something which has to be taken forward first before we think in terms of having a cashless society, even in pockets. But before that, I will go back to an experience which I had something around, I think 5-6 years back. It was when I was in Sikkim. In one of the places, one of the villages, I went for a meeting, in a village meeting, and I found some of the people who had gathered. Suddenly, in Nepali, a person came and made an announcement. And everybody felt very happy. I couldn't understand what was told. So I asked the person who had brought me there as to what is that these people are talking about. He simply said that they have actually slaughtered a pig in the village, and whatever meat has come out of that, they have passed on pieces to all the houses. I said, is this a practice? It is something like a rule. Whoever has a matured pig and it is slaughtered. So we are basically again talking about a cashless society there. You are talking about people who are still working in a barter system in a way. That's also cashless. Please remember, when we discuss about cashless, we are talking about India as a country and solutions which will take care of people like these. And I am basically working in an organization which basically works for these people. So when I am talking about cashless, my idea of cashless, let me tell you one thing more. Like, please don't consider me to be a person who is against cashless society because of the examples which I am giving here. I am basically trying to put forward these examples to help you understand the problems which are there in this particular society much better, to go into a cashless position. 15 to 20 years, maybe. I don't know. I will not be in job at that particular point of time. I'll be very happy if it happens. But even today, if I think of giving my daughter in a city like Bombay money through a bank transaction, she doesn't prefer it because 90% of the transactions which she wants to do, or places where she wants to do the transaction, doesn't have facility of cashless transaction. I am talking about this because let us think of a person who is going to the college. What are the type of transactions he or she does? He will be perhaps buying a train ticket. He or she will be going and purchasing some food, maybe buying a movie ticket. Yes, movie ticket is possible. But when you talk about 2 or 3 transaction modes you have to adopt, a person prefers only the one which is most easiest. That is having the cash in my pocket, which is perhaps easiest. Why is this easiest? Cash is free. Whenever we talk about cash transaction, there's no charge in it. There's no built-in charge with respect to cash transaction. So I would request this panel, based on the factors which have been mentioned here, also consider some of the areas which are, like for example, how to make it acceptable rather than only thinking whether it is acceptable or not. I would request the panel also to think in terms of how to make it affordable rather than thinking of only whether it is affordable or not in the present circumstances. I would say in present circumstances, cash is more affordable than electronic transaction. So if between A and B, whichever is more affordable, I will adopt that. That's a normal practice, that's a normal human tendency. So if cash is more affordable, I go for cash. Electronic transactions, whenever I do an electronic transaction, there is a charge. But whenever I do a cash transaction, there is no charge on that. All these factors, all these gamut of factors have to be taken into consideration when you are talking about policies, when you are talking about situations in which we are working. With these initial words, I would also like to add one more thing which basically relates to the law part of it. I think a reference was made about Denmark. There's another country which is Sweden, which is also announced that within 2 years they're going cashless. They're 97.5% on electronic transaction. They have only 2.5% left. They have already made a law where they say that a person can refuse accepting cash at any point. That means you go to a shop, you want to make a cash payment, the fellow will say, you don't take my product, I don't take cash. That's the simplest possible thing. There are points in other countries also, even in US, which is not that cashless, I would rather put it that way, like Sweden or Denmark. The situation is that there are pockets, like for example, suddenly you go to the airport, you want to pay for your excess baggage or something like that, they will simply say only card payment is acceptable. It's something like it, again, it's happening in pockets, it's not complete in all respects, but how do we incentivize cashless movement and what are the benefits of it? Basically, I think we will have to think in terms of the 80% of the population, not about the 20% of the population who are perhaps in a position to afford cashless transactions because of their knowledge, because of their skill, or because of the facilities which they have been able to avail of over the last, during their lifetime. I think with these words, I would request my friend Mr. Babu to come over with his views.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Now, thanks to Sahasab about whatever he is expressing, but ultimately I look at who needs cash. So I look at him who wants cash rather. For him it is a compulsion. Suppose I don't need cash, definitely I will not be looking at it. Okay. And when it comes to affordability, it's very affordable as compared to carrying cash and the risk part of it. It's okay as long as I operate in a particular small village, it helps me. Suppose assume that I have to send the same money to another place. What is the cost? Where is the affordability? That's much, much expensive. So if you see most of the electronic transaction, even as a public sector bank and most of the private sector, somebody comes to you and says, sir, send this small money to somebody. What is the operational cost? And same thing, sitting at your own place, maybe here the affordable, when it comes to electronic transaction, the cost is very less, very minimal. And here the challenge is not the affordability, it is the affordability of the gadget. So that part in villages, the BC should take care. If you see Arundhati Bhattacharya otherwise said, when the payment banks were announced, he said, I have 56,000 BCs, let them be activated to counter these payment banks, okay, whatever are coming, okay. So I believe when you are operating in a very small circle, yes, cash will help, but if you want a global or your people are moving around, definitely this electronic transaction. Just I want to add, as somebody else, one of the speakers, eminent speakers, they are saying, it is not only cashless, it should be paperless, and it should be 24/7, and it should be easy to use. This is what I feel, sir.
Okay, I think I'll move on with the next panelist. We have Mr. Khare here from HDFC. I would like to know his views.
Thanks everyone. One thing happened while I was coming to this, that I just missed the address and reached the wrong place. I will not go into details of our what has already been discussed or what is already known or what possibly keep discussing most of the time. I will raise a very stimulating point here. What we need is an ISIS-like infrastructure. I'm not referring to that terrorist organization, I'm just referring to that thing. What is required is intent. What is required is the service to be available. What is required is the infrastructure to be available. And finally, what is required is all these things should be secure. It's not the problem with the cash. If I am willing to use any alternate means, then only I will do this, irrespective of whatever you give me. So if I don't want to fish, you can't force me, even though the fish is right at my doorstep. The other thing which is there is the service available in the first place to replace cash? Now there are enough things which are available which can actually act as a substitute. So intent has to be there. Second thing, the services have to be there. Third thing, is there an infrastructure in place? So do we have places where there is a provision where, say, for POS acceptance infrastructure or a mobile to mobile data transfer infrastructure, anything. So the infrastructure has to exist. And finally, it has to be very, very secure. One of the reasons why I feel people carry cash is, it is with me, it is in my pocket, nobody can take it away. I am fully in charge of it. But if it is a digital cash, if it is a bank account, if it is lying in my mobile wallet, it's a free invitation to anybody who is smart enough to take that away from me. Because the only way my money can be taken from me other than these things is by putting a gun on my head. So that too anyway we can't avoid. So what I simply want to say is, this ISIS is available, this cash problem will disappear. If it is not, whatever we do, whatever we say, whatever we keep telling, is not going to happen. I will stop here for the want of time. We will take it further.
Yes, I would request Mr. Parthasarathy to give his views with respect. Though you made a presentation from HP's point of view, I think with respect to this particular topic.
Thanks. So at the cost of repetition, right, we got to take small steps now. There's a little bit of pessimism going around, but my personal belief is that we got to take small steps. We have taken those steps from a regulatory standpoint. It's about the technology providers and the service providers to take it up. And I continue to believe that we got to start somewhere. And and there are two worlds, right? Basically, there are two worlds. One is the unbanked, which is the focus of user, and that's a place where if there's no real requirement for transfers, it's not really going to happen. But cross-border remittances and the fact that there are migrant workers is clearly an opportunity which is anyway getting triggered. So I see that there's a starting point anyway in that kind of a population. From a city side, merchants and adoption is where we really need to push. And the moment these two areas are tacked, it's a starting point of the journey. So it's not going to get closed overnight. What started in Philippines took 4 to 5 years before it got somewhere. Denmark has taken some 8 to 10 years. We're just starting. So maybe in the 5 to 6 years, we'll get somewhere there.
I just put some of the challenges in front of you. The latest figure which we received from Ministry of Finance and data which was again obtained from Department of Telecom. Still there are 3,007 villages in India where you don't have any kind of connectivity. When we are talking about a cashless society, it essentially means all these villages also have to be put onto connectivity. We are working on that, but again there will be only 1 or 2 points perhaps where perhaps connectivity can reach. We all know what type of problems are there here in connectivity. Maybe, and at certain points of time you will be surprised that I have visited villages where we have put the cooperative banks on CBS, just the starting point of going cashless. I would rather put it that way. It's the plinth basically of the house which has been prepared, called the cashless house if I'm talking about. We find none of the mobile networks are working, but the VSAT thankfully is working and the transactions are going on. So both the sides are there. I would now request Mr. Saha to give his views.
Thank you. So basically, as a Senrisa, we are working in both urban and rural, and with my experience, I will say that there is no single formula which can work both in the urban and rural. I mean, India is a country of diversity, the geo-political scenario which is different in every state, right? So in urban anyway, I mean, it's very easy to start the cashless because most of the people, whether they're literate or illiterate, they're seeing others doing the same, and it's easy to copy what the educated people are doing by the people who are less educated, right? But when we are talking of the population who are in the rural, right, it's very tough in the present scenario to go in a cashless, which is, I would rather say it will be impossible even if someone is thinking, dreaming, right? So my suggestion, would be like to the policy makers or who are drafting the policy. We need to take few steps. It cannot be a one sudden morning you open up your eyes and see everything is rosy, right? So my suggestion would be like, first we should focus on the young generation, like maybe the school student, college student, and let us make a policy where they should be brought into this cardless, the plastic card, right? So that after 2 years, 3 years, when they will grow and start doing job, right? They will have the habit of, they will never use the money, because we have been grown in such a way like we are using, bank account from our college life, right? So we have never, hardly I remember any time I have more than 1,000 or 2,000 rupees in my pocket. I carry few cards, right? So that is the way we have grown, and if we can build that to the school student or college student, right? It will automatically, we don't need to give any pressure to them. It will automatically, they will use that channel. So that will be my first suggestion. And if the government is, the government is very serious, and to really take this cardless, we should keep some cap. Because I know that when you are sitting in the government side, it will be very tough to take that call. But we can always make a cap like maybe a lakh, right? Above that cannot be a cash transaction. So because you cannot make 50 rupees or 5,000 rupees as a cashless, right? But it could be always, a cap could be always be there, right? Maybe 50,000 above, any transaction has to be cashless or through electronic medium only, so that it could be accountable. If you can believe me, if you can make that little initiative, right, a lot of things will change.
What you're basically telling is to put a cap on the volume of transaction, which is okay. Let us get into the policy part of it, which perhaps can be taken care of on the various issues from this particular session. One is, when we talk about availability, that's the first point. I should have sufficient number of points available. I'm looking at it from that point of view. That is, for doing the transactions without cash. Is it available in this country when we are talking about cashless? And what are the things we can do about it? I'm talking about point of sale devices. We have something around 500 million or something like that. We have approximately 500 million or so. Yes. Debit cards, we have 20 million credit cards, we have 1 million point of sale terminals. But 1 million, that's a figure which, what can we do about that? I think that's something which I'll ask you. Maybe some policy decision.
Yeah.
Just 1 million.
This POS, yeah, probably I advocate close all the ATMs. When I'm talking about cashless, why should an ATM be there? Why should I take money when I'm looking at cashless? So POS is the solution where, no, I'm just supporting that. So POS is the solution, and definitely we have to grow in big numbers. So unfortunately, see, we have grown over the, like from the ALPM to so many changes we have done. We were there was a hype about micro technology. Then we said, great, it is CTS. Now ATM, you can dispense anything. Now everything is getting outdated. Now what we can see is POS, yes, lot of, because the government also has allowed now 2,000 rupees in tier 3 and above cities, where they can dispense cash. The BCs, the POS guy can dispense cash. Now, should I put a big ATM with all VSAT and AC and all, or should I give it to a POS guy, and the benefit will go to the rural people? So definitely, sir, I do agree, sir, the POS should grow in big numbers. At least at the present day situation, yes, this will help mainly the rural people. While the government also has suggested pass it on to the tier 3 and 4 cities only. So I agree that POS should go.
Thank you. A simple suggestion from my side I would like to put forward here. Can we remove the import duty on POS devices? I'm simply telling that because a single POS device, import duty on POS devices, a single POS device, if you go fully functional, in the sense it will accept all kinds of cards I'm talking about, because you have customers coming with only chip-based cards, and I'll say I have a POS, but I don't have a POS which runs chip-based cards. So it has to run a chip-based card, it has to run a magnetic strip-based card, it has to accept everything. That will cost you something. It can go even up to 18,000, 19,000 or even 25,000, somewhere around that. So first of all, I will make it much more affordable by removing the duty on that particular instrument. Maybe that could be one of the ways by which it can be made. I mean, you are basically propagating, you are basically enabling more availability of the instruments.
I will not even get into whether a POS is available, only 1 million, where it will happen in the next 5 years, whether there will be 2 million, 3 million, whatever. Why do we need a POS fund in the first place? There is no requirement for a POS. What we need for a cashless society is, we need a bank account. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana is a big step there. I think we have already reached some 65 crore accounts there. We are 125 crore people. So children below 10 years, not supposed to do banking, remove them, I guess we are 100 crore left. So only these 35 crore people are left who need to have a bank account. Just like we are making a IT return mandatory for anybody, just make having a bank account mandatory. Let everybody has to open an account, otherwise you are not part of the society in the first place. What we need, second thing, we need a mobile phone. We are 125 crore people. We already have more than 1 billion phone in India, as I hear in the last figures. Everybody will have a mobile phone. Anybody who deals with cash is bound to have a mobile phone. Last thing, what is right here? There is a way, so bank account is there, mobile is there. The only third thing which is required is connectivity. Connectivity is also all pervasive. As I hear, telcos claim that they have already covered from 97% of the entire India. So SMS is anyway there if the data connection is not there. What I hear is around 22% of the smartphones have data connectivity today. 22% is the approximate smartphone penetration, and the overall data penetration is around 17%. Telcos have the capability to let at least financial transaction happen on even a feature phone, because the only thing which is needed is internet. And today's 2000 rupee feature phone can run a Java-based smart app. So just make it mandatory. Just open it. Just like Airtel Live, I can go and inquire about my bill without having to have an internet connection. I should be allowed to transact using that part. So telcos need to chip in. The final thing which is there is, let the government or the regulators or whosoever is there make non-commercial transaction. I am referring to say remittance or maybe an export-import transaction. Other than that, all transactions to come at a zero cost. If the cash can be free, electronic transaction might as well be bloody free for that matter. And it doesn't cost really much. And if required, we are wasting so much of subsidies every year on so many things. Let's give a subsidy to banks or the financial service providers. Okay, if your cost of transaction is estimated to be 10 paisa, you will let me know what is the total number of transactions which have been done on your platform in lieu of cash. I will give you that much money. If we can waste subsidy on food, if we can waste subsidy on petrol, if we can waste subsidies on so many other things, we can might as well afford a subsidy here as well. So let's kill the animal in the first place. Because if we keep taking baby steps, and I'm not against that, like my colleague was saying, people are making inroads. We also are part of one network called Chiller. So using mobile to mobile, you can simply transfer money whatever you want to do, whether to a taxi driver, or to a merchant, or to your friends. So that anyway is existing. So baby steps are anyway there. They are happening for last 30 years. Sometimes democracy is devil. So if you really want to get out of cashless society, let's make a law, give a bank account, give a mobile number, make accessing internet through mobile phones, including feature phones, free, just where you are talking about internet of free things. And finally, number of transactions reported by a bank for a non-commercial transaction, which is related to Exim or in those kind of transactions, count it, give 10 paisa subsidy, matter is closed.
I think you well said. My thoughts align totally with yours. I don't think there's a need for a pause from an outside-in approach. Okay, so I'm not from a bank, but the way I see it is exactly the way my colleague just articulated. Nothing new to answer.
Just one small piece of fact I would like to give here, just to make it slightly more, make you think. I was just talking about Sweden. Sweden was the first country in Europe to introduce paper money. That was 353 years ago. Today they are going cashless another 2 years down the line. I think your views, please.
What's your question?
That was
After 353 years, they are going cashless.
Basically availability part of it which we are discussing about.
Yeah.
Availability
So,
of
I will agree
of
to
transaction facilities, how we can increase it.
So today, I mean, the POS is outdated. I mean, if you want really move fast and considering the vastness of country, right? So I think the mobile technology is the only solution we have and which is very cheap. But we would request some, maybe some, I mean, if you want to do a commercial transaction, it's not only just sending money to my friends or family members, right? If I really want to transfer money to the merchant, right? So there some changes would be required. Some security aspects will be there because at the end of the day it has to be ease, right? So if I want to make say 550 rupees transfer to a rickshawala or a taxiwala, so it has to be, I have to be very much confirm and confident that if I transfer it will go to him and he will acknowledge that I have received that money. Now you can go away. So that part, and for that, I mean, like we have technology like NFC enabled mobile. Once the NFC enabled mobiles start coming into the market, so that will come out of that challenges. I mean, so that the acknowledgement of receipt, even if there is no connectivity or less connectivity, the person who is transferring the money will get an acknowledgement and the recipient will also get an acknowledgement. And for that, the NFC enabled smartphone will play a bigger role in tomorrow, I mean, for the single factor authentication.
I think all the people are getting into one area which I think this panel is getting into one area which perhaps would make it available, accessible, maybe affordable also, and that is basically getting into mobile banking. Now, let me put a question to the panel. Reserve Bank of India has put certain restrictions with respect to mobile banking also. There are certain criteria on the basis of which a bank can become eligible for mobile banking. Again, I am going back to the mass I represent. There are 2 or 3 questions which I would like to ask here, and that is what ultimately would perhaps lead to the solution to all this. When I am talking about mobile banking, I have those small banks who will not become eligible as per RBI guidelines or RBI criteria for going into mobile banking. That is one problem. Basically, if I am talking about the cooperative banks, let me put you very simply, 80% of the farmers in India have loan accounts with the cooperative banks and they take only 20% of the credit. I am talking about the small and marginal farmers. It is these people who are basically dealing with the credit societies. It is these people who are dealing with the DCCBs, the District Central Cooperative Banks. Now these DCCBs may not be eligible for getting into mobile banking at all. So how do I reach them through mobile banking? That is one question. The second point which I would like to put forward here, when I am talking about mobile banking, I would like to ask you, at least I will be very open in this. When I first came to know about internet banking, it took me really, because, and unfortunately before that I was dealing with something which was, let me be very open with you, I was basically handling all the sessions with respect to digital frauds in our staff college, in our training college. So I was very scared of operating on the digital platform. It was a different reason altogether. But even after getting onto internet banking, how many of us have been very comfortable operating on internet banking just in a jiffy? I'm not talking about the kids of today. They will come another 10 years down the line. I'm talking about us, 40s, 50s. How much time does it take? How did we get into it, and what is the time you expect those masses to take to adopt this particular technology and going cashless?
I'll just take the question because my response is more based on history and trend, right? So going back to what I presented, Kenya and Philippines, totally agro economies, not fundamentally people who are aware of technology. Simple mobiles, not the ones which are there today, right? It's 2002, 2004. So where there's a clear need, definitely people will adopt. So it's a function of whether there's a real need. And the way it really took off is obviously they were all unbanked. So like my colleague just said, it's important to fundamentally have a bank account. And that's the starting point. And the fact that money needs to move and the money moves through the mobile device, it doesn't need to be complicated, and therefore to that extent history proves that it will happen if there's a need. That's what I would like to comment in a short, in a nutshell.
Maybe either I'm oversimplifying or I'm going to extremes, but I will stick to that at least for today's discussion. Just kill internet banking. It is not required. In another 5 years or 10 years, it will simply disappear. M-Pesa, like my colleague said, is a roaring success. Only 2 things succeeded there. Government wanted it, so it happened. Number of telcos in Kenya, I think not more than 2 or 3. Okay, I'm not fully updated on that, but I don't think it is more than that. So government and told telcos did not bother about banks, and banks anyway did not bother about their customers there. So telco and government decided it's a success. Another 10, 20 years, maybe Kenya will stop printing notes also. I wish this will happen. Internet banking is not required. Why people in, like you mentioned, cases about farmers or cooperative societies or cooperative banks? What is required is a very simple interface in the language which I want, so that I can transact. So the experience, the way a farmer will give 100 rupees to somebody to buy some seed, if that can be achieved through a equally simple and intuitive user interface on a mobile device, it is done. Paytm started with a simple selling recharges, which everybody was selling before also and will continue selling later also. Simply succeeded, and nobody anticipated that they will end up with some 50 million customers on that and will go for a payment bank license also. Only thing they did, they were selling the same thing, only they simplified user experience, nothing more, nothing less. Even bank accounts are not required, given the technology is all pervasive, so you have PPIs issuing wallets. Give a very simple mobile banking interface, could be in the form of an SMS-based interface or an app-based interface, depending kind of phone you carry. Just let it happen. Just the only thing which needs to be ensured possibly is security. So that I am believing that companies like HPO, for that matter, anybody who is worth their salt, are capable enough to provide the kind of security needed. And if it still gets into another extreme, if we can run a Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana or something which is running to insure everybody, why can't we simply insure transactions? Just insure transaction, take 1 rupee every month from me, insure transaction and keep a limit there. That's all.
Thank you. I think at the cost of being between you and lunch, I would still request the other 2 colleagues also to give their views.
Regarding the cooperative banks and all, no, they are known for riding piggyback on the big banks. Like now we help other cooperative banks in ATMs, we help them, even the regional rural banks. Probably they can take the same route. And when it comes to internet banking, yes sir, even in the, so many are not comfortable. Suppose I have a customer base of 7 crores, but still very, not a reasonable number are getting into it. We don't know whether it is they are concerned about the security or the big guys like that. So this is what I feel, and incidentally, I was in Kenya. I worked in Kenya for 3.5 years as IT manager in Mombasa. That time the cost used to be 27 shillings per call, per minute. I don't know how. Probably I was in 2000, 2007. I think they made it much cheaper. I think. So that's what I think.
As far as this, your first question, like the small banks like the cooperatives or the local DSCBs, so who are not eligible for the direct membership of mobile banking like the IMPS, they can always go as an aggregator model or the ASP model, where through some sponsorship of some already existing member, they can also avail the facility.
Policies are not there for that. That is exactly what I was trying to hit on. I think both of you have come to the banking side, what the problem is. And the policies from that angle is not there for aggregation part of it. I am talking about mobile banking where a person can operate from the mobile itself. IMPS, they are allowed to do it only when they are going from the branch or from the ATM. They are not allowed to do it from the mobile. So these are some of the restrictions which are there. What I was basically trying to drive at, since the time is short, I think I'll have to close it here. There are 2 or 3 things which have to be perhaps attacked when we are talking about a cashless society. We have the pillar of policy, which is absolutely important. I think one of the things which I wanted to talk about and I think has been hit right on the head is basically the intent part of it. We have to be very clear that we really want a cashless society. because of certain other reasons, which I don't think this forum is the area where I can talk about it. And there is the third thing, which perhaps is one of the most important thing, is even if I'm talking about a person getting used to a mobile app, he has to first learn how to download an app. He has to first know how to load that particular software in a small instrument, or some mechanism has to be developed. That means there is, forget about operating and the next few steps, it could be very simple. That means there is a high level of requirement of literacy before we really, I'm talking about financial literacy as well as general literacy, before we can really think of going cashless the way we want, or the way we see, or the way Sweden or Denmark is going. I think with these words, I'll close the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, panelists. I would request everybody please be on dais so that I would ask our keynote speaker, Ms. Shri Vineet Goenka ji, to please come up on dais and felicitate our panelists. We'll start with our Subrata Gupta sir, that is CGM Financial Inclusion NABARD. Please give a round of applause to all our gentlemen here. Then we'll go to Rajneesh Khare sir, Head of Digital Transformation and Mobile Banking, HDFC. We have Buchibura Babu, DGM IT, Bank of India. We have Mr. KP Shah, the MD of Sunresa. Rajneesh Khare sir, Head of Digital Transformation and Mobile Banking, HDFC. Please give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Last but not the least, we have Balaji Parthasarthi, Head Banking Practices, HP. Let's give a big round of applause to all our panelists who have really made it interesting, and the panel was really, thank you sir for that interesting panel and discussion, and really gave us the views and ideas that how we can go out for cashless. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you.